Most people think their failure to maintain a daily routine comes from laziness, weak willpower, bad genetics, or simply not being the disciplined type. But the truth is far simpler and far more uncomfortable. Most routines fail because they are built the wrong way. Imagine a thin glass bridge stretched over a river. It looks beautiful, symmetrical, spotless. But the moment a storm hits, the glass shatters. The problem wasn't the storm, the problem was the fragility of the bridge. This is exactly how most modern people design their routines, pretty on paper, weak in reality. They sit down on a Sunday night, open a new notebook, or open a brand new app, and write down the perfect plan, wake up at 5 a.m., meditate for 20 minutes, read for 1 hour, exercise for 45 minutes, eat perfectly clean meals, work for 8 focused hours with no distractions, spend quality evening time with family, journal before bed, sleep at 10 p.m. sharp. It looks beautiful. It feels inspiring. It feels like starting a new life. But within 3 days, life hits back. A late night, a headache, an urgent message, a stressful morning, a distraction, a small setback. Suddenly the plan collapses. And once it collapses on one day, guilt builds for the next. And then the routine is abandoned entirely. In the samurai era, this exact pattern destroyed many young warriors. They believed discipline meant strictness, rigidity, and perfection. They believed routines should be flawless. They believed a warrior should follow a plan exactly as written. But reality punished them, because life, like battle, is chaos. Weather changes. Enemies appear unexpectedly. Fatigue comes without warning. Plans fall apart the moment they meet pressure, and so their routines failed. They trained beautifully on good days but collapsed entirely on difficult ones. A warrior who trains only when conditions are perfect is not a warrior. He is a hobbyist with a sword. There is a story from the Edo period of a young samurai named Hiroto. He was intelligent and ambitious, known for writing the most elegant training schedules anyone had ever seen. His scrolls were filled with precise timings, detailed sequences of exercises, structured meditation cycles, dietary plans, and daily moral reflections. His teachers praised the beauty of his planning, and he felt proud of how disciplined he appeared on paper. But reality was crueler. Every time the castle summoned him late into the night, every time rain disrupted outdoor training, every time his body felt sore or his mind felt clouded, he'd break the schedule. And once he broke it, he'd begin again the next day by rewriting a new, slightly modified, slightly more perfect plan. In 1 year, he had rewritten his routine 34 times, but he had followed none of them consistently. One evening, an older samurai named Satori watched him crumble under the weight of yet another abandoned schedule. Hiroto sat at the table, frustrated, holding his ink brush, trying to design an even more perfect plan that would somehow fix the problem. Satori approached him, took the brush from his hand and dipped it into the ink. Without saying a word, he dragged a single stroke down the empty scroll, a rough, crooked, imperfect stroke. Hiroto looked confused. Satori finally spoke. "This," he pointed to the crooked line, "is your real routine. Not perfect, not symmetrical, not clean, but real, strong, messy, but unbreakable. A routine that survives life is better than a routine that impresses your ego." Hiroto didn't understand at the time, but later, he would realize that he was never failing because of lack of discipline. He was failing because he was designing routines like a decorative scroll, beautiful but useless. Samurai philosophy taught something radically different from what modern productivity culture teaches. They believed discipline was not about perfection, it was about continuity, not about intensity, it was about inevitability, not about strength, it was about survivability. A routine should not collapse when you are stressed, it should not shatter when you wake up late, it should not fall apart when your motivation disappears. A routine must bend like bamboo, not break like glass. This is the first truth the samurai mastered. Routines fail because they're created for the person you wish you were, not the person you actually are. They're designed for ideal days, not real days. And any method built for ideal days dies the moment a real day begins. The real reason your past routines failed is not your fault. You simply used a fragile method. You forced discipline instead of cultivating it. You planned a fantasy instead of preparing for reality. You tried to build a castle in the sky instead of using the ground beneath your feet. What the samurai discovered, and what modern people have forgotten, is that discipline is not born from big plans. It is born from small inevitabilities. When a routine becomes inevitable, consistency becomes your natural state, not your forced effort. This is the beginning of the samurai method. Samurai didn't design routines based on motivation or inspiration. They designed them based on psychological architecture, triggers, identity, environmental cues, minimums that guarantee action, and rituals that seal behaviors into identity. They had a method called Shugyo rhythm, the warrior's rhythm of daily training, a method built not for perfect days but for all days, especially the worst ones. Shugyo rhythm had 3 fundamental principles, each designed to make daily action unavoidable, even when life becomes chaotic, unpredictable, or emotionally heavy. The first principle was brutal in its simplicity. Every routine must begin with one small action that guarantees momentum. Samurai understood something that modern science confirms centuries later. The brain resists large tasks but tolerates tiny entry points. A warrior didn't begin training with an hour-long session. He began with 10 swings of the sword. A monk didn't meditate for an hour. He simply sat down and took 3 breaths. A scribe didn't plan to write pages of text. He dipped the brush into the ink. The minimum action was not intended to achieve mastery. It was intended to defeat inertia. Inertia is the true enemy of discipline, not laziness. Once momentum starts, the mind naturally continues. That is why the small beginning is not weakness, it is strategy. The second principle was the trigger. Samurai didn't rely on alarms, clocks, or calendars. They relied on environmental cues because environmental cues don't collapse when life becomes unpredictable. A warrior did not say, "I will train at 6 in the morning." He said, "When the sun touches the east gate, I begin my training." The moment the sun appeared at the gate, the brain recognized the cue. The cue removed decision-making. Decision-making removed excuses. In other cases, a samurai would train after the first sip of morning tea, after closing the sliding door of his room, or after placing his hand on the wooden floor. Triggers created automaticity. Automaticity created consistency, and consistency created unbreakable routines. The third principle was identity reinforcement. After every training session, samurai performed a short ritual to remind themselves, "I am the kind of person who trains daily." This small closing gesture, sheathing the sword, folding the robe, closing the journal, acted as psychological cement. It wasn't about celebration, it was about confirmation. Identity is the strongest force in human behavior. You may break a habit, but you will never violate your identity. If the identity is, "I am someone who trains," then training becomes non-negotiable. The behavior becomes part of your self-image, and once self-image changes, the behavior becomes effortless. This is the power of identity rituals. They engrave discipline into your sense of self, but the samurai went even deeper. They understood that a routine must be crafted for resilience, not perfection. It had to survive exhaustion, sadness, sickness, unexpected visitors, rainy days, political duties, sleepless nights, battlefield drills, and emotional turmoil. So they tested their routines by asking, "Can I still do this on my worst day?" If the answer was no, the routine was redesigned. The goal was not maximum progress, it was maximum survivability. A routine that could survive the worst days would naturally thrive on the best ones. Many modern people fail because they design routines for motivation. Samurai designed routines for inevitability. They created conditions that made training unavoidable. Their method wasn't about dramatic morning rituals, extreme schedules, or perfect discipline. It was about structural psychology. Triggers remove choice, minimums remove resistance. Identity rituals remove inconsistency. This triad makes the routine stronger than your mood, your worries, your laziness, or your doubts. Samurai also practiced what they called Kaizen flow, small expansions. The idea was simple. Never expand the routine until the minimum action felt natural, automatic, and free of resistance. Once the minimum felt effortless, the routine expanded organically, not forcefully. The student didn't say, "Tomorrow I'll double the training time." Instead, the body naturally moved longer. Expansion was a natural outcome of consistency, not a forced act of willpower. This method ensured long-term results without burnout. Shugyo rhythm is not an aesthetic philosophy, it is a practical system rooted in human psychology, centuries before psychology had a name. It teaches us that the smallest sustainable routine is more powerful than the biggest fragile one. It teaches us that discipline is not strength, it is structure. It teaches us that momentum is more important than motivation, and it teaches us that identity is the real battlefield where discipline is won or lost. This is the samurai method, and it changes everything. Ren was a young samurai with more doubt than confidence. He was not particularly skilled, not particularly fast, and certainly not naturally disciplined. His teachers considered him average. His peers often surpassed him. But what truly crushed him wasn't the judgment of others. It was the disappointment he constantly felt in himself. Every month, he attempted to build a new routine. Every month, he failed. Some months he lasted 4 days, some months only 1. On the worst months, he quit before even starting. He admired the warriors who trained for hours with calm dedication. He admired their focus, their stamina, their sharpness. He wondered what he lacked that they naturally possessed. One morning, after oversleeping and missing training yet again, Ren sat alone in the courtyard with a heavy heart. His master Tanji approached, not with anger, but with quiet curiosity. "You look troubled," he said. Ren kept his eyes on the ground. "I cannot follow a routine," he muttered. "I plan it, I prepare for it, but the moment something goes wrong, I lose everything." Tanji sat beside him and listened. After a moment, the master asked a question that would change Ren's life. "Tell me, when a river meets a rock, does it stop?" Ren shook his head. "No, it flows around it." Tanji smiled. "Then why do you expect your routine to flow only when the path is clear?" Ren didn't fully understand, but Tanji continued. "Tomorrow you will begin a new routine," he said. Ren sighed. "It will fail again." Tanji shook his head. "Not this one. For the next 30 days you will perform only 10 sword swings at sunrise." Ren blinked. "Only 10? That is too easy." Tanji responded with a calm voice. "That is why you will succeed." And so Ren began. On the first day, he woke up at sunrise, walked to the courtyard, and completed his 10 swings. It took less than a minute. He felt almost embarrassed by how small the task was. On the second day, he repeated it. On the third day, he felt a bit tired, but the task was too small to skip. On the 6th day, he woke up late, but because the assignment was so minimal, he still managed to complete it. By the 10th day, a strange thing happened. Ren naturally began doing more than 10 swings. Not because he forced himself, but because the motion felt incomplete after 10. He began doing 15, sometimes 20. By the 15th day, he added footwork. By the 20th day, he began practicing combinations. By the 25th day, he trained longer than the students who had perfect routines written on scrolls, but rarely followed them. By the 30th day, Ren felt transformed, not because he had become a master, but because training no longer required effort. It had become a reflex. When Tanji watched him training on the 30th morning, he nodded with approval. Ren bowed to him. "Master, I think I understand now," he said. "I didn't need a bigger routine. I needed a smaller one that I couldn't escape from." Tanji smiled. "Every man wants to build a tower, but only the wise man builds the foundation first." Ren realized something even deeper. Discipline wasn't about strength, it was about inevitability. If he made training inevitable, discipline would follow naturally. A few months later, during a regional tournament, Ren faced a skilled opponent, someone who followed an intense, elaborate training regimen. Everyone expected Ren to lose, but he didn't, not because he was stronger, not because he was more talented, but because he was consistent. His movements were fluid, his focus was sharp, his stamina was steady. He didn't panic, he didn't freeze, he didn't break rhythm. He had trained daily, regardless of mood, weather, motivation, or circumstances. When the match ended, Ren stood victorious. His opponent, exhausted and frustrated, said, "How did you train like this?" Ren gave the answer that had changed his life. "I never trained a lot, I only trained daily." Years later, Ren became known as the warrior with the unbreakable routine. But his secret was never his strength. His secret was smallness, consistency, identity, and inevitability. He was the living proof that a simple routine done daily outperforms a perfect routine done occasionally. His story has been passed down not as a tale of talent, but as a testament to the power of beginning small and never stopping. The samurai method is not an ancient artifact. It is a living system that applies perfectly to the modern world. Whether your goal is fitness, writing, studying, business, creativity, mental clarity, or spiritual discipline, the structure remains identical. Today, you can build a routine that finally works, not by copying complex schedules, but by following the same architecture samurai used for centuries. The first step is choosing your anchor action. The anchor action must be the smallest meaningful behavior that creates momentum. Not something impressive or dramatic, something that is almost impossible to skip. For writing, it might be 50 words. For reading, 1 page. For exercise, 5 minutes. For meditation, 2 minutes. For studying, reviewing 1 flashcard. For business, sending 1 email. What matters is not the size of the action, but the inevitability of beginning. Your anchor action should feel almost too easy, almost laughable. That is exactly the point. The second step is building a trigger. Without a trigger, every routine requires willpower, and willpower is unreliable. You need a cue that tells your brain, now begins the process. Your trigger must be tied to an event that happens every day without fail. Waking up, pouring tea, closing a door, returning home, sitting at your desk, plugging in your phone for charging. These moments are perfect because they already exist in your life. If you attach your anchor action to a cue that already exists, the routine becomes automatic. You no longer ask yourself, should I do it now? You simply do it because the cue demands it. The third step is adopting the rule, never skip twice. Skipping once is human, life gets messy. But skipping twice is surrender. Samurai believed that missing once was a warning, but missing twice was a pattern forming in real time. So if you skip a day due to exhaustion or illness or chaos, you must rebound immediately the next day with your minimum action. This prevents guilt from turning into avoidance and keeps the routine alive even when motivation dies. The fourth step is finishing every session with a closing ritual. This ritual should be short but meaningful, something that signals to your brain that the identity is complete for the day. It might be writing a check mark, closing a notebook, bowing slightly, closing your laptop with intention, whispering done, rolling up your exercise mat. These small rituals act like glue binding the action to your identity. Over time, you no longer see yourself as someone trying to build a routine. You see yourself as someone who simply does this every day. The identity begins to lead the behavior instead of the other way around. The fifth step is expansion through natural momentum, not forced ambition. Once the anchor action becomes automatic, once it feels strange not to do it, the routine will naturally grow. Your 5 minutes of exercise will become 10. Your 1 page of reading will become 5. Your 50 words of writing will become 200. But you never increase the minimum requirement. The minimum stays small forever. The expansion is optional, instinctive, and rewarding. This prevents burnout and ensures that on bad days, you can always return to the minimum. Most people believe discipline is about becoming stronger. Samurai believed discipline is about making resistance irrelevant. You don't become disciplined by fighting yourself every day. You become disciplined by designing your environment, your cues, your expectations, and your identity in a way that makes daily action the path of least resistance. A routine that is shaped by psychology instead of motivation will outperform even the strongest willpower. Your routine should not impress you. It should carry you. It should feel like the river flowing around the rock, not the soldier trying to lift the rock. A routine that survives chaos is a routine that succeeds, and the samurai method, Shugyo rhythm, is built for survival. If you follow it, your routine will stop being a fragile plan and will become a living rhythm, something that grows with you, adapts with you, and supports you through every season of life. In the end, the samurai understood the lesson that modern people forget. Discipline is not built on perfect days. It is built on ordinary days. It is built on messy mornings, chaotic evenings, stressed afternoons, and tired nights. The goal is not perfection. The goal is continuity. And continuity is achieved not through force, but through structure. Start small. Attach it to a trigger. Never skip twice. Seal it with a ritual. Expand naturally. This is how you build a routine that finally works. This is the samurai method.